Okay. Looks like I'm having some sound issues here. What is going on? All right. Let me see here. Bear with me for 1 second. I'm trying to see what the hell is happening with my. Oh, yeah. All right. Y'all know how this go. It's always a little something that happens differently every freaking week, man. As soon as you think you got it together, boy. Uh, what's up, man? Welcome back to the Onyx Report. Man, yeah, just when I thought I had everything set, boy. Man. Anyway, this is the Onyx Report, where we as Black male justice advocates use critical analysis to uplift Black men and boys. I hope you all are doing well. Um, it is first week of December, which means that class is in for me next Tuesday. And until then, I'm a bit of a zombie. So I'm trying to keep my energy up, but I think I'm just a little burned out, really. It's been a little nonstop, and you know, it's just been a long one. But I hope you guys are well. We are broadcasting today on innerlightradio.com, Black owned, so support that. We're also on YouTube and Facebook, so I hope all is well. I see a few people already in the comments coming up, so I hope y'all are well. What's up, JJ? Malika, what's going on, good brother? Raekwon, what's happening? Joe, average brother. Ron Matthews, Myron, what's going on? Barry, what's up? Pops in the building. How you doing? Barry K. Artisan, what's up, Artisan? Good to see you. Salute to the zombie. It's real, man. I've been in and out of it. Shout out to BGS who just shared the show. Um, it's going to be an interesting one, and today is going to rely a lot on y'all calling in with your own stories. But I will give you what I've been given so far. So we'll get into that in a moment. But in the meantime, let me go ahead and try and salute some of my subscribers, but I'm going to see what's going on with my sound. So here we go. Let's see if this kicks in. Hope everybody's well. Man, there is something that is really going wrong here. All right, give me 1 second. It looks like my mixer is acting different. Hmm. Yeah. Irritating. Yeah. Don't know what's going on with that. Yeah, I was having some tech problems and I messed around and called tech support and everything is out of whack. Let's see. Yeah. All right. Not going to be able to fix this in the moment, but we will continue best we can, all considering. Okay, that isn't going. Okay. Says there's problems with my sound device. Interesting. Mhm. All right, so it's going to be one of those days today. All right, my apologies, people. I was hoping that this would run a little smoother, but it is what it is. So we'll move on and keep it going. And we'll get straight to the point as soon as we can. Nevertheless, support the channel, like, share, subscribe, join, and donate if you would. You can do so right here on YouTube by clicking the join button right next to the subscribe button. And I hope you've at least subscribed. Kind of been shadow banned again, but some of that is because I need to broadcast more regularly. Just been a difficult time in the semester, so I'll get to that as soon as I can. Shout out to MLR. Appreciate that support. I hope you guys can hear me all right. I'm assuming you can because I haven't seen anything about no sound. So we'll just assume. Okay, good. All right. So yeah, support the show. You can also support the show through Patreon. You can support the Onyx Report, be a monthly supporter there, or you can support the Institute for Black Male Studies with a monthly contribution as well. So check into that. I hope you will look to do that as we keep things going here. So all right, cool. But again, appreciate the support, MLR. You guys can also do so on Cash App, PayPal, and Venmo, and support through those avenues. All right, so let's get started. We got a few things to kind of get at. Let me see. Okay, well, y'all know that I like to celebrate Black men, and in as much as I may talk about our vulnerabilities and the challenges we face, I will also talk about our successes and celebrate them. All right. So we have our Sacred Black Masculine series, and this is not. This is something that is a product of the show. It's an organic thing. I do it as it comes across my desk. So if I haven't done it, it's simply because nothing popped across my desk that week. But and at the end of the day, feel free to send me in anything you can that falls into this category. Shout out to Crispus for the support on the Cash App. Appreciate that. So let's see what we got today. Yeah, yeah. This one did my heart well. This is a young brother in Ohio. This is you can find this on blacknews.com. It is dated January 2020, but I'm going to celebrate it nonetheless because I did not get it at the time. But this is entitled "Ohio Teen Makes History, Graduates College Before Finishing High School." This is in Warrensville Heights, Ohio. Cameron Ray, 17-year-old high school student from Ohio, has recently earned his associate's degree from Cuyahoga Community College. He's the youngest student from the city of Warrensville to ever accomplish this before finishing high school. Um, yeah, so I just wanted to kind of shout that out because, especially as it pertains to young Black males, we don't often get to celebrate publicly their academic accomplishments, and I definitely want to make sure we do so. So shout out to Cameron for definitely holding it down and pushing the boundaries. So if anybody has any updated articles on him, please make sure you send it. I'd like to see how he's doing, but shout out to Cameron. What's up? Moving on. This was another one. This was interesting. This one popped across my desk coming out of LinkedIn. And this is a brother named Daryl Freeman, who's a board member at Blue Cross Blue Shield of Tennessee. And he actually states, he says, when I learned that the 4-year graduation rate at MTSU for African American males was 20.2%, I came up with an idea that would be soon to be called the Black Male Success Initiative. My alma mater did not jump on board. However, the Tennessee Higher Education Commission loved the idea, and we just completed a study that has some action items. Thanks to all the universities that participated in the study and supported the idea. If the state of Tennessee is going to be great, everyone must do well. A link to the report is below. And this actually, again, came off of LinkedIn. So shout out to brother Daryl Freeman, who apparently spearheaded the development of the Black Male Success Initiative. And if you're interested in looking into more of that, I will put the link in the comments section. Dr. Barry, appreciate that support. So the link is in the comment section as far as that's concerned. It looks like my connection to Facebook is acting weird. So I don't know if Facebook got the link, but you can go to YouTube and you can find it there. But this is Daryl Freeman, board member at Blue Cross Blue Shield, Tennessee. So shout out to him. Shout out to no one. Appreciate the support and the donation. And that is what's up. All right. So let me kind of continue from here. All right. So we do have a very brief service announcement. This one literally just popped across my desk before the show started. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but I thought it was important for us to at least put on the table. This is a piece that you can find on HuffPost.com, and it is about a 10-year-old girl named Brittany Tashina Cox. I think it is Brittany Tashina Cox. And this is a young girl who died by suicide. Says she was bullied and called the N-word in Utah, right? And so this young girl talked about, being in Utah, being in a predominantly white school, being made fun of for everything from her eyebrows to her beauty mark to, of course, her skin color. She was taunted and talked about as if she was a primate. She was told that her skin looked of feces and that she smelled and these kinds of things. And she was taunted repeatedly by other students about this. That is actually not why I bring this up. One of the other things that she talked about with her mother before she committed suicide was that her teacher was virtually unresponsive, not only to complaints, but also unwilling to work with her, unwilling to help her with homework, didn't even really address her. Now, the importance of this and why I bring it up is I'm a father. And I've witnessed this with my own son in elementary school. So if you are a proponent of homeschooling, or if you found an alternative situation that works for you and your family, cool. But at the end of the day, if your child is in a fairly hostile environment, especially culturally speaking, please make sure that you safeguard their well-being, their self-esteem, their experiences. Make sure you safeguard these things, because at the end of the day, this young girl was autistic. She did not have the means to communicate to her mother what was going on, and took her own life before her mother fully got an understanding of what was going on. And as I said, I've seen this happen as early as kindergarten. I've seen teachers virtually ignore not only my son, but other Black kids in hostile environments. So I just want to put a warning out there, especially for the fathers who are listening, to please make sure you are keyed in to what your child is going through in these schools, what may be happening with them, because you never know. Now, they didn't say in the article, at least not that I saw in this particular article, there may be another, or there may be something I missed. They didn't say how she committed suicide, but she did. And, this baby is gone all over something like that. So, again, just brief. I wasn't going to spend a lot of time on this, but this is something I've witnessed. And I do know it can have a profound effect on somebody as young as this. And so at the end of the day, we have to be guardians, as much as we are parents. You have to guard against the world trying to destroy your child's self-esteem. So be on guard, definitely be on guard. And, my condolences to this baby's family. But this is what these kids are dealing with. And we've always dealt with it. But at the end of the day, you never know. And this includes adults, of course. You never know who's at a breaking point and when. You never know when the wrong comment at the wrong time can send somebody over a ledge. You really don't know. And that includes ourselves. We've all had days where somebody said something at just a moment where you're extremely vulnerable. It might be most days this would bounce off you like nothing, but on a given day, it hits you, and it has more of an impact than even you want to admit. And if that can happen to an adult, we know it can happen to a child, right? So be mindful of that, and protect these babies out here, straight up. Um, Yeah. So this one, it wasn't limited to gender by any means, but I felt it important enough to deal with. So we're gonna get to it. I'm not gonna dance around this one. Um, this was a conversation. This whole issue stemmed from a conversation. Now, some of you may have seen the subject of tonight's broadcast on my community tab. Some of you may have seen it on my Facebook page. And if you haven't seen it at all, don't worry, I'm about to fill you in. Now, the thumbnail for the show is pulled from a popular pornographic video. And I am aware of these things because I am the ultimate researcher, and it was purely a product of research where I found this thing, not at all that I watched it. But anyway, that's beside the point. Those who have seen the actresses involved, most particularly Semi D'Souza, the woman in the picture, the older one, know that this is a series that promotes this idea of a mother offering her daughter to her man. Right? They have all kinds of scenarios and so on and so forth. I used that image because I was not sure if YouTube was going to cut me off tonight. Wasn't sure, still not sure. We will see. If everything gets cut off, I'll know why. But the image I hoped would communicate what I was trying to get across, even if I had to change the title or anything else might have happened. But at the end of the day, this was this is actually Thanksgiving Day last week. Had a conversation with a good friend of mine, called me out the blue, and we were rapping a little bit while my son and I were cooking, showing him the recipe for his mother's gumbo. So we were doing a little bit of that, just kind of kicking it. And as my friend called, we were talking. Now, just to let you know, he's over 50. He's around 50. And that's going to become relevant in a moment. But I'll read to you what I posted if you haven't seen it, just to set the stage for what we're actually talking about tonight. So it says, I said, a homeboy of mine called, and amidst the flow of the conversation, he told me how he's had several women offer their daughters to him sexually as an incentive for him to be in a relationship, not only with the daughter, but with the mother, right? The daughter was an incentive for him to actually be with the mother, right? The idea being he'd have access to both women on a regular basis, right? So we discussed how rarely this is discussed publicly, while the molestation narrative has been quite normalized, right? So partly what we were getting at is it's easy for us to talk about men who engage in various types of molestation, various types of sexual assault charges, particularly with underage girls. But there is not really a public vocabulary, a public narrative for these kind of experiences. In essence, a man who finds himself in a situation, unbeknownst to him, not something he's initiated, where he's being made an offer by a mother and her daughter, or I should say, by a mother who's involving her daughter, in the dynamic, right? I said he also shared how some of these very women weaponize this offer against a man if he does not conform to her wishes. His practice is to get the hell out of there as soon as this happens, which I regard as a smart move. But at the end of the day, the offer's been made, right? Now, I briefly ended that by saying, as an academic, I can't help but wonder, how does one study such a phenomenon? Because obviously, mothers in this instance who have engaged in this behavior are not about to admit it publicly. And as a matter of fact, as my friend went on to give me a little bit of detail, they don't come out and say it verbally. There's nothing that's going to be recorded and brought into a court of law. You have no evidence in the situation, but an indirect, clear offer has been made. Now, the key component to this for me, yes, my mind was blown when he said it. And he said this has happened multiple times. This is not the first time. He's had several. And he didn't say when it happened, which again will be key in a moment. But what he did say that blew my mind was how this can become weaponized. In other words, it's actually sort of a trap. It's a trap in the sense that if you take that contract, right, and you engage in it, what can happen if you fail her expectations, if you upset her, or even if you try and break up with her, how these kinds of scenarios can easily become charges of sexual assault and some form of, pedophilia, as long as she's underage. Now, we did have a number of responses to this, and this is one of the things I'm going to read a few to you from Facebook and from YouTube because there were actually men who came forward with very similar stories, right? Most of them kind of along the lines of, making the argument they thought it was just them. And I'm telling you, I had everything from, brothers that I'd had no information on, brothers who, work low level jobs, low income, all the way to tenured professors, six-figure earners, reaching out to me to share their story. Some did so publicly, some did so privately. Everything I could share, I posted on Facebook. And I'm going to read some of those things to you so you can get a sense. This is not just something my friend experienced on his own. And again, he made the smart move of leaving. Now, there were a number of others that reached out, most particularly women, who posted how they were aghast. They were blown away. They were frustrated and were sickened that mothers could do this. And that's part of the discussion we need to have because we take the concept of mother and we pull it out of its human context. Mothers are kind of given, they're pedestalized. They're given kind of this, extremely almost divine type of nurturing category that is almost void of the reality that everyday people experience. And this isn't to denigrate mothers. It's simply to say that mothers and fathers are human. And in as much as you might have some great examples of mothers, you're going to also have some horrible ones. And that's not part of the narrative. So in as much as male debauchery can be discussed without hesitation, when it comes to situations like this, people have a hard time accepting it. And most that commented on this had a hard time accepting it. Some, however, took it a step further and completely bypassed the mother's behavior in the scenario and made it the fault of my friend. Made the argument that he was at fault because he didn't call child services. And in turn, every man who read this post and didn't call child services was somehow at fault. Now, here's the problem with that. He didn't give me any details as to when this happened. And I told you, he's around 50. So this very well could have happened yesterday, and the daughter could have been 7 for all I know. Or it could have happened 30 years ago, and the daughter was 17. So now you're looking at a 47-year-old grown woman. Who do you call? And what kind of evidence do you bring to bear? And as Black men, we also know this can very easily turn on you. And we'll get to that a little bit later. So that being said, that's the situation. That's what was put on the table, right? And I do want some of you who are willing to come up and share experiences, whether it's yours or somebody close to you, somebody you know about, feel free to bring that up and share it. Um, you know, just, don't make sure we're monitoring the way we kind of communicate about this. We're going to keep it clean, but I do want you to be clear. And nevertheless, in the meantime, I will share with you some of the responses I got from brothers who wrote in, because again, this was fairly new to me, but it was amazing to me how many people it wasn't new to, right? Um, let's see, and it got over 250 comments right off the bat. So this didn't take long before it kind of blew up. Let me see. And some of them were kind of random. They were around the point, but they kind of went off on tangents. So I will try and keep it to the ones that we need to keep it to. Some of these just had comments for days. Let's see. Hold on here. All right. So this one's from a woman. And she writes, back in the late 90s, I had coworkers who had an event planning business. One of the events they planned was a woman's night with male dancers. I went to their opening night to give them feedback on the event. The second week, I told them I would not attend anymore because it disturbed me that so many mothers used the event to celebrate their daughters' 18th and 21st birthdays. That was my first and only experience with male strippers, but watching mothers urge their daughters to be sexually provocative or them joining their daughters made me feel dirty, right? So that's the first response from a young woman. Let's see here. Okay, so this one, right? This is from a brother named Pete. He says, I'll be honest with you, the last part I have never heard of happening in the US, but I'm afraid to say that the practice of single mothers offering their daughters to their boyfriends is a fairly common practice in my home country of Jamaica, and it's mostly a transaction in exchange for economic security. What's even worse is that, to the best of my knowledge, while these men are prosecuted when this is found out, the mother usually gets off scot free. He goes on to say in a following post, there was a case in Jamaica where a girl was being molested by her mother's boyfriend, and she confided in a female neighbor. That neighbor decided to take it upon herself and took the girl to a nearby clinic. The mother somehow got word of this and went to the clinic to get her daughter. While there, she cussed out the neighbor, telling her to mind her own business. And then she cussed her daughter out, telling her that she was ungrateful because the boyfriend was the sole breadwinner of the household, and she's putting that in jeopardy. And this was not the only case of this kind. Right? This is what we're hearing about. Let me see here. I was, I wasn't ready this whole day. And I think I posted this the following day. I think it was Friday I posted it, but nevertheless, still blew me away. Okay, where's another one at? Okay, so let me open some of these up here. Okay, another one, and some of you guys will remember this better than I do. I kind of remember it, but I didn't have a link to it. But a brother wrote in, he said, I never heard of this exactly. He said, but I remember a video that went viral over the summer where a mother and a daughter were doing porn or watching each other have sex or shaving each other, some depravity like that. I don't remember the details, right? So one brother wrote in on that. Let's see. I apologize. I should have pulled these out, but I was in a bit of a hurry today, so bear with me. Okay, let me get out of here. Some brothers were very clearly celebrating being SYSBM. Some of the brothers were very clear about challenging men and women in the chat who were looking for creative ways to blame men for this dynamic, even if they had nothing to do with it. Let's see here. All right, let me see. Where'd it go? Okay, let me skip some of these. Okay, so one brother wrote in, he said, this isn't shocking at all. I had a female relative involved in the sex industry on the periphery, but would regularly drop gems about how women were the biggest pimps because they slide under the radar. The way she described it, they're able to coerce men and women through trust and rapport, and are able to establish dominance by using outside power. Right. That was another. Let's see here. And shout out to my brother Davi Migtal Ibmore. He actually brought up some stuff that I might go into a little bit later, brought up some various studies, very few of which actually dealt exactly with what we're talking about, but nevertheless were kind of in the ballpark. But especially in the academy, it's hard to have these kind of discussions because at the end of the day, one of the going practices is to blame Black men for sexual debauchery. It's not something that you actually find a whole lot of discussion about, particularly in Black circles. So let me see here. Then I had some people writing in privately, so I had to kind of, make sure that any personal information was removed before I could share it with them. And one brother actually wrote in on something that we might get into a little bit later when I bring people up. He said, this doesn't even cover how Black moms are giving their underage sons, babies included, to their adult female friends for sexual play and fun. Now, that's important. If you guys remember the D. Ray Davis interview on DJ Vlad's show, where he talked about being violated by two grown women, if I remember correctly, they were friends of his mother, right? And he didn't talk about whether his mother was directly involved, but I can tell you, as a father, there's not going to really be too many instances where two friends are going to be with your child alone. So they both sexually violated him to the degree that he's still impacted to this day. You can watch the interview. He, as a comedian, he was making everybody laugh in the room. You can even hear the cameraman laughing, the light man laughing, Vlad himself laughing. But if you look at D-Ray's face, he actually looks shocked. He actually looks stuck. And he actually admitted in the midst of all of the jokes he was making that he still doesn't do oral sex very often to this day because that event traumatized him to that degree. And all he could say about his age at the time was that he was so young, he had no hair on him. He couldn't remember his exact age, but that's all he could say. So to suggest that boys aren't traumatized by this is absolutely ridiculous. But to raise the question, if boys experience this like girls do, is something that, again, we've heard very little discussion about. Let me see. Okay. Some of these I'm trying to avoid because I don't want to get certain people into anything. But I posted a few in here that I'm having trouble finding. Okay, so here's one that I posted. It says this was sent to me. Regarding this post, I found out at my father's funeral that his stepmother had pimped him out to her friends. See, going back to the thing that I talked about. Those experiences impacted him his entire life and led to instability in relationships. This started at 11 years old, shortly after his birth mother kicked him out of the house in favor of her new white husband. I mean, it's important for us to talk about trauma, most particularly intergenerational trauma. But it's interesting how sexual trauma is often talked about from one direction. Right? I think people still have trouble empathizing for Black boys and Black men, for that matter, and don't often know how to emote. They don't know how to interpret this, so it usually ends up with either laughter or complete obliviousness. There's no response at all. But if you talk about girls or women being violated, we immediately know how to respond to that. And it makes sense. Let's see. I actually had a couple women write in and they were, just trying to be as dismissive as possible, talking about how easy it is for women to find sex. And because it's so easy, there shouldn't be a problem with it, right? So the subtext being, hold on one second. The subtext being that because women can get sex so easily, this is not really a thing. And I had to differentiate between sex and relationships because, again, remember the narrative. The mother was actually trying to have a relationship with my friend. She was using her daughter to entice him to participate, right? That's a very different dynamic than just looking for sexual gratification. One brother just said, I have stories to tell about the situation. It's wild out here in the land. And I told him to DM me. I'm not sure if he did, but a few did. Let's see. Here's another that I posted from another DM I was sent. It says the post about the women offering up daughters to men for either relationships of access. It has happened to me several times. You see me on my Facebook page. I'm not a terrible looking guy, especially before my injuries when I was in much better shape. Anyway, I've worked in law enforcement and military for years and often came across women with young daughters in various situations. A few of these women have offered their daughters to me for influence or to provide a lifestyle to the daughters that the local males can't provide. It was shocking the first time it happened from a woman with a 16-year-old daughter. I've had men ask me to date their daughters, but the daughters were usually much older. But but all the women who've done such have offered their mid-teen girls. It's very unsettling, right? Now I'm putting these out here because I'm hoping to kind of get some reflections and responses from some of you listening. And I will post in a moment the link for those of you who are interested in coming up and sharing what you may have seen or experienced. Let's see. One gentleman on YouTube and and my community tab says, I've experienced this in my early 30s with a friend's sister and mother while working at one of their properties. It was an ego boosting experience, but it wasn't worth destroying my friendship, so I declined the invitation. He peeped it early on and was really embarrassed with their behavior. Right. Another person wrote, sadly enough, this seems to be a common practice. Wish I could say this was the first time I've heard this. Right. Let me see. Oh, there was a whole discussion that took place after that that I didn't see. Um, let's see. Yeah, yeah. Yet again, more attempts to make men the blame for the situation. Let's see. Another wrote, my baby mama's former godmother has been cut off from her children for decades solely because she offered a neighbor her daughters as a means of enticing him to cheat on his wife with her. She even tried to sleep with my baby mama's grandfather, despite knowing he was happily married with 5 children. Right? Hmm. One gentleman wrote, Doc, that's a powerful and often uncharted discussion. I have heard of one instance from someone that very thing was done. I just couldn't wrap my head around it at first, and kind of went from there. So various levels of acknowledgement from men who have either seen it or experienced it. So this gentleman says this has been happening for a long time and it needs to be talked about, and it's an evil survival tactic, and they are so desperate they will do anything because it's really a psychological war, and most logical thinking men would walk away from a crazy question of sleeping with a woman's daughter to stay with that woman. But I'm scared for the daughters that are going through this now, and it's criminals activity that need to be prosecuted, or it's criminal activity that needs to be prosecuted. Yeah. So I'll pull up a few more of these probably in the midst of some discussion. I'm going to drop the link and let people come up and talk a little bit about what they may have seen. So Officer Faulkner in here. I have no idea what he may have seen as a law enforcement officer that may weigh in on this if he has a moment. Not sure. Let's see. Okay. I'm a little behind on the comments here, but I have dropped the link, so feel free to come on up. Let's see. Let me get BGS up here if you got a minute. Come on up, man. Appreciate you dropping the information in the chat. Please make sure you guys support the show, if you will. Let's see. Okay. What's going on, Malika?
Peace, peace. How you doing, big brother?
I'm doing all right. How about yourself?
Good, good, man.
Yeah. Well, what do you got to say about this, man? Any thoughts? Have you seen this before?
Oh yes, oh yes, oh yes, oh yes. I can recall. I remember, when you're in your early 20s with your friends, you first start going out to gentlemen's clubs, and I
Okay.
remember in my early 20s, we would go to these speakeasies in Philadelphia, in like Southwest Philadelphia. The front is a candy store, but in the back, you knock on the door 3 times and they slide open.
Oh wow.
Oh yeah,
you, you went back to what's that Eddie Murphy movie?
Harlem Nights.
Harlem Nights, man.
Yeah, but this is like the 90s or 21st century version of how the way it was. So
Okay.
we go in the back, and we all in like between the ages of 21 to 24.
Hmm.
And I remember seeing there was a mother who was in her 40s and she had her 18-year-old daughter in there and they both were stripping.
Mm.
And they just wasn't stripping, they was doing a lot of other things. And it was just like, and I could hear the girl saying, "Mom, I'll be right back. I'm going up here with this guy." You can see a guy that's old enough to be a father, and and I'm looking at one of my boys, and my boy shrugs his shoulders and he says, "Yeah." And that was the first inkling of like, wow, what kind of life do these people have? And I seen the girl walking around, but naked, half naked, the mom doing the same thing. And one of our friends knew the mom, and the
Okay.
sister, I mean, and the daughter kind of knew the guy too. So I said, "You know them?" He's like, "Yeah, man. They a mother and daughter team. They all the time." He says, "Why are you interested?" I said, "Hell no, man." I was like, I was freaked out by that.
Mm.
But then as it went on, as I got older, when I was a police officer, I seen more of that. I seen more
Okay.
mothers and daughters doing stuff like that. You see more mothers, like you said, pimping out their daughters.
Mm.
You see a lot of mothers pimping out their daughters. And, back when I was a cop, you know, mid to late 90s, crack
Mm.
was still around.
Oh, okay.
The
Okay.
crack game was still popping. And you see mothers pimping out their preteen daughters and their teenage daughters. And it's just something that is crazy, but it's something that's crazy within our community, but we don't talk about it.
Hmm.
And especially if it's a mother. If it was a father, we'll throw him under the jail or we're ready to castrate and hang him. But it was the mother. Oh, well, she had it hard. It was crazy and all this other stuff. And I'm not saying we need to bash our sisters, but the thing is, we let it slide a little bit with the women. You
Okay.
know, we don't give the same vitriol to women pimping out their daughters as the way we would see fathers pimping out their daughters or pimping out their sons.
Hmm. Yeah.
And that was just something that was just there, but just it was just so crazy back then, you know,
Yeah.
to seeing a mother and a daughter normally, you know, stripping and prostituting themselves in there, and people just seeing it normal, and
Hmm.
the daughter the same mom. I'm
Yeah.
like, oh my god! But it was just something that was wild that stuck with me, and it was just something crazy.
No, absolutely. Hold on, real and Kalila, shout out to you. Hope you're well. Yeah, that video you're talking about the mother who actually brought her daughter back into the porn recording, I guess, for not
Yeah,
going to say the
ghetto
name of
gaggers. Yeah.
it. Yeah. Well, that video definitely came up in the comment section of the Facebook discussion on this.
Mm.
Hmm.
But yeah, so this is I mean, again, this was something that I had not heard about. Of course, I dropped it to BGS, and he was like, "Oh yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
I've
It,
seen
it's
this."
it's happened. Yeah, it's
You know,
happened,
Mhm.
especially with the woman that has children and has daughters and no man and they need help. So
yeah,
they'll loosely suggest that got to bring up they won't bring up the subject like directly, but thing is they'll hint at it.
right,
They'll
Mhm.
hint at
right,
it that oh yeah she's hot in the pants and yeah she wants she wants older men or she wants a grown man and stuff like that. They'll start dropping hints, and at first you think you're crazy. Like,
hmm
it says, why is she talking about her daughter and wanting sex and her daughter maturing and stuff like that to me? Because I don't want to hear that. It's not my child, so I don't want to hear that.
right,
But you start to realize, oh, okay, she's pushing you in that direction. So,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, I've heard it more than once. But yeah.
No, you remind me. There were a couple people that wrote in. One
Hmm.
gentleman said he did experience this with a white family. It was
Mm.
it was a it
Yeah.
was a Caucasian woman who was offering herself and her daughter to keep
Hmm.
him, involved in with
Hmm.
both of them. But another gentleman actually wrote in and said that what he was familiar with was waking up in the middle of the night after he had intercourse with the mother, and
Mm-hmm.
she brought her daughter in. So the
Mm-hmm.
room is dark, he's waking up, and
Mm-hmm.
the mother has her daughter engaging
Okay.
him sexually.
Ooh.
and
Okay.
and now he didn't say what age. I think he didn't say what age she was. I tried to get people to share what they could, but not pushing too hard.
Mm-hmm.
But nonetheless, but the point I think he was trying to share with me was simply that it doesn't even have to be a conversation. It doesn't have to be something that's stated.
Mm-hmm.
You can just wake up and find yourself in it. But the
Mm-hmm.
key part of the narrative, though, was how easily that this can turn into a dangerous such situation for him at the
Mm-hmm.
mother's whim.
Yeah.
So even if you haven't accepted the contract, you haven't done anything, you can call the authorities and find yourself implicated in something that you didn't do. And we know in this Me Too era, the accusation alone, especially for black men, is ridiculous. I'm gonna bring hold on before I bring in our next guest. Put the little names on the screen. So before I bring Aku in here, I want to kind of show some of you something you guys may have seen already. Let me see. Sorry, my computer screens are definitely acting interesting. But this is something you guys I know in the last few days have seen kind of everywhere. This is a situation with an author that is considered fairly renowned, I guess, to some extent. Let me see. Let me share the screen here. Come on, wake up. There we go. All right. So if you're not familiar, all right, this is author Alice Siebold, and I
Mm-hmm.
may be mispronouncing that, who has apologized to a man cleared of her 1981 rape. So this was somebody she identified as her rapist, right, on site. And, years later, after him doing a significant amount of time, I definitely want to say it was over 20 years. Anthony Broadwater, 61 years old, was convicted in 1982 of raping Siebold when she was a student at Syracuse. He served 16 years in prison. His conviction was overturned November 22nd after prosecutors re examined the case and determined there were serious flaws in his arrest and trial. And apparently, somebody who was starting to do a documentary for her found these flaws and brought them up. Turns out, of course, this gentleman was innocent, all because, and this is the author of Lovely Bones. That's how I know her. I don't know too much of her other work, but nevertheless, she, finally came forward with some kind of apology. But the point is, this is how easily an accusation, even pre Me Too, can affect black men. We've known this legacy going back to slavery, right? Just the casual mention of rape has been many a black man's introduction to a noose, and this dynamic has not ended. It is very much alive and well, and I argue has been empowered that much more via Me Too. So that being said, this is a legacy that black men are born into having to deal with, whether you know whether you've done something or you haven't. Um, okay, it looks like our other guest had to go to class. Let's see. But yeah, so this is what we're dealing with. And this is still alive and well. And so making accusations or even trying to report somebody can be a dangerous thing for black men. It can be a dangerous dynamic for black men.
Oh, oh yeah, really go bad really quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Let me see. So I'm gonna put the link in again and see if anyone else wants to come forward. But this was one I wanted to leave the floor a little more open to
Mm-hmm.
because it's a delicate matter. And it isn't, I don't think this is anything that's limited to the black community, but as we are black men, we are talking about our community and the kind of situations that black men can find themselves in. And I just found it interesting how quickly and readily some people were to find new ways to blame black men for
Mm-hmm.
this particular dynamic. Either one of you want to weigh in on that?
Well, yeah, I'm sorry, I don't want to talk over you, BGS. Were you going to
No,
say
go ahead.
something?
No, go ahead.
Reason why I think it's so quick to blame black men is because a lot of our sisters don't want to be held accountable. And
Mm,
also, when you're realizing 80% of our women are single mothers from all socioeconomic backgrounds, and there's no man in the house covering, and a woman resorts to this type of lifestyle, and she resorts to this type of, basically it's child abuse.
mhm, mhm, mhm.
You know that if any man who's worth his mantle is not going to do that, you're dealing with damaged women and damaged people. But the
Hmm.
thing is, we're not putting, when you put that mirror up and saying, you're effed up for
Mhm.
doing this, it takes it away because a lot of times we're dealing with no accountability. Women don't want to be held accountable, but our women doubly don't want to be held accountable. And that's why this slide's going by, because you see this, just all other forms of abuse. You just had last week that mother that wanted to get her son's hair done like a woman.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
But a
absolutely.
woman pimping her daughter out for a man, or just pimping her daughter out, or pimping her and her daughter out for whatever, for money, for the interest of a man, or just for fun.
Mm,
This is the level of debauchery what we have. And
mhm.
here's the funny thing though. We only think the debauchery pendulum swings one way.
Right, right, right.
And I'm not saying that there's debauchery on both sides, because we're broken people. The
Mm,
problem is we just don't speak about it, or it's not spoke about more with our women in our community, because women have been given a pass.
yeah,
And we don't want to look at it because we still have this sugar and spice and everything nice view. But when we get down to nitty gritty, we're like, oh no, oh no.
yeah.
They're just as crazy and jacked up as we are, but
Mhm.
we don't speak about it.
Yeah, men are definitely the face of sexual debauchery, whether it has to
Yes.
do with pedophilia, whether it has to do with engaging sex workers, whatever you want to
Yeah.
call it. In the black community, black men have had to hold that image the whole time. And when these kind of scenarios come up, there's a lot of cognitive dissonance. People look at it, don't know how
Hmm.
to process it, and just turn the other way.
Yeah. You
You
know.
know.
You can't, because you're taught that especially a black mother would never do anything close to that, and so it
Mhm,
blows your mind to think that because when you first hear it, it's like, okay, she can't be trying to lead me to what I think she's trying to lead me to.
mhm. Exactly.
She has to just be talking, and she's just not. She doesn't mean whether I think she's meaning, but thing it keeps coming up and up and up and up. So when you mention it and say, yeah, I've heard this before. In fact, the movie Precious talked about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's exactly what it talked about, and with her mother's consent, because she's
Mm,
talking about um, Precious' mother talked about uh, when Precious was a toddler, and now why a toddler's in the bed with your man, and you having when you're having sex. I don't know why that is, but
right.
but the thing is that like I said, Precious talked about it. In fact, the woman that wrote the book, Precious, said this is actually a combination of all the girls that she taught,
Mm,
in a special ed class, right?
mm.
About all these damaged girls. So it's very prevalent.
And we need to actually, I think, because to me, any solution that we're going to have a conversation about in Black America,
Hmm.
it needs to actually start with Black men being able to articulate what we've not been allowed to prior. It needs to
Hmm.
be something that we come forward with, because there's been such a legacy of us not having done so. I mean,
Yeah.
this is just one example of so many conversations that have not taken place
Yeah.
in many ways, and we need to be able to do that. We really do. Um, and I was hoping, and I forgot Malika was law enforcement in the past, because I know there's some stories there that play into this. But I wanted to know how prevalent it is, and I was
Yeah.
contemplating what
Yeah.
types of studies to do. But
It's yeah. In the crack era is really common because it wasn't even hidden.
Yeah.
Where if you if the little girl was close enough in age and she didn't have any money for a hit, yeah, she would pimp out her daughter.
Mm. But see, and I think even that, like we can imagine, okay,
Hmm.
crack
Hmm.
era, drug addict, looking for a hit. That I think people can process that. Where I think
Well.
some people had difficulty with this is it
Hmm.
didn't necessarily involve drugs,
No.
and it involved a mother of clear, sound, and mind, mind, if you will,
Right.
making this decision involving her daughter.
Yeah.
People had
Economics.
difficulty with that.
Yeah.
Right? But the subtext to it too was that it also had to do with providing security, providing
Mm-hmm.
resources.
Right.
Well, the Jamaican brother pointed it out a little more clearly. He said that, there was no ambiguous aspect to it. He
Hmm.
was the breadwinner for that household, and
Yeah.
this was a means of drawing income for certain people.
Hmm.
Um, you know,
Survival. Yeah.
survival,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Simply survival. Yeah. If
Okay,
you, go ahead.
go ahead. No, go
I
ahead.
was gonna say, go ahead, Doc.
No, 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 go ahead.
Yeah. This is like I said, this is uh, we would like to think of our black women as saints and saintly mothers, but women they're human beings just like anybody else. They will whatever it takes to survive. Black women have kids to get a check. Black women have kids to advance their careers. Black women have um, kids, and once the check comes, and then they really don't care much about the kids. So if they can get additional income by serving up their daughters or even their sons, they'll do so. It's no different than like back in the day, a mother pushing her little 9 or 10 year old out into the street to sell drugs.
Mm,
Mm-hmm.
It's just another form of pimping.
yeah. And that legacy in and of itself, I've been saying for years, black men have been the face of it. But
Hmm.
if you look at it, it's never been, because I think part of it is we have this feminist narrative
Hmm.
that, you have men, and this is somewhat transracial, but especially for black men, men come in and oppress women. But if you look at like the lives of Richard Pryor or even James Brown, right,
Right.
you'll
Mm-hmm.
see elder women in the family who had their sons serving as pimps and they were
Hmm.
madams. You know
Yes.
what I mean? Richard Pryor's grandmother was a madam. Her
Yeah.
sons, his father and uncle, they were pimps. They were trained under her. She'd been doing
Hmm.
this longer than they had. You know what I mean? We don't
Hmm.
process it along those ways. If you go back and watch that Chadwick Boseman portrayal of James Brown,
Right.
you see his mother left. His father was a sharecropper, was too poor. Went into the military and dropped him with an elder woman family member. She was
Hmm.
running all kinds of hustles, and one of them was a brothel.
Right.
You know what I mean? It wasn't that you had this top-down woman being oppressed by men narrative, this simplistic pimping framework. It's far
Hmm.
more nuanced than that. And again, that goes back quite a long ways.
Well, they touched on that in Luke Cage, the
Mm,
first season,
yeah, they did.
where the matriarch was a madam.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely. We got Ra L up here. Ra, want to jump in on this topic? What do you have to add to it?
Um, Peace, Dr. Johnson.
How you doing, man?
I'm doing fine. Staying BGS and the brother, your play cousin from Philly.
What up, man?
Um, this is a topic I was so glad to see you do.
Hmm.
It's something that I've been hitting on pretty hard the last, I would probably say like last year.
Hmm.
Um, um, Many of the conversations around Black women really does not um, really take into consideration the mental health aspect of these particular types of discussions.
Hmm.
We tend to look at things much more from a sociological perspective. We know the what, but we're trying to actually figure out the why. Um, Much of the psychological research surrounding this particular type of issue is steeped into borderline personality disorders.
Okay.
And um, I had left a comment on your I think a community tab when you had put the thing about the brother saying what he said.
Yeah.
And it was a book I had referenced on there called Understanding the Borderline Mother.
Okay.
Now, they talk about there being, I think, 4 types of borderline mothers. And I just want to go through these briefly because I think it's really
pertinent to this.
Important that we really understand and really nail down exactly what we're looking at.
Okay.
You have this is from a book called The Emotionally Absent Mother.
Okay.
The author references actually the Understanding the Borderline Mother book. And she basically said there's 4 types of borderline mothers based on a predominant emotional tone.
Mm-hmm.
She said one includes the waif, a mother who is a victim who constantly refuses help and has pervasive low self-esteem.
Okay.
The hermit, who is essentially a frightened child hiding from the world. The queen, who is mirror hungry, narcissistic, entitled, and demanding. And the witch, which is the most extreme ends of the spectrum, who is rageful and sadistic, taking pleasure in another's suffering and demands absolute power. This one is the one that we can attribute to this particular mother. And what I thought was fascinating in this particular section is that they actually talk about this particular aspect of a mother and her relationship, specifically to her daughter, in a section called "What Mothers Can't Let Herself See." And I'm just going to read this part, but I want to attach it to the other book, because in the other book, Understanding the Borderline Mothers, they talk about the Susan Smith story. All of us are pretty much familiar with that story from the 90s, I think it was, in which she drove her children into the water and they drowned, and then she blamed it on a black man.
Yeah.
But they talk about how she represented this borderline personality disorder. Basically, these types of mothers, they sacrifice their children to protect themselves. That's why they do it.
Okay.
And I just want to read this particular section because this particular point is really powerful. Because it really, when I read this the other day, like I had to just shut off my iPad and just put it to the side.
Sit with it. Yeah, to sit with it for a minute. Huh?
It was just that powerful. But this is just a quick little read, especially for the audience, so they can really get to the nuts and bolts of this. It said there is one other rather unique situation in which mother may be emotionally turned off to her child when she can't let herself see that her child is being abused by someone close to her. Most often this happens when her husband or partner is sexually abusing her child. There are several very potent reasons mother would not want to see this. An obvious one is the protection of her primary relationship. Who would want to believe that her partner is abusing her child? She may feel dependent and unable to survive without her partner and therefore be unable to see what is unacceptable. To allow herself to become aware of the abuse, she has to care more about the child than the partner, and this, unfortunately, is not always the case. Very often, the non-abusing spouse also has a history of her own that she is protecting herself from. Mothers who marry abusive men were often themselves abused as children, and many times this abuse is wholly repressed and unknown to them. Sexual abuse, once again happening in her home, is something that mother does not want to see. In an effort to keep this further away, she may harden herself to any child who is placed in a position of the unhealed child inside of her. Although
this is interesting. This is interesting because one of the things I often ponder on is when you have men who have been charged, accused, or even arrested for these dynamics. I don't care if you're talking about celebrities like R. Kelly and Bill Cosby, or just everyday black men or men in general. What I don't find is a discussion in public about all the nuances of their trauma, all the nuances of what may have caused this, what happened in their childhood. It's interesting to me in terms of what you're reading, how detailed the analysis is of what may trigger her behavior and how she responds to these dynamics, but how little I've heard in terms of nuance and detail as to men. It's almost as if to say that men are so part and parcel to this behavior that they don't need to be examined, and whatever examination has been done doesn't need to be publicly discussed. But when it comes to mothers, wives, whatever, and even daughters, there's ample discussion that needs to happen. Even when you have mothers who are, those who are initiating this abuse, we have all of these in-depth analyses and discussions and then think pieces that are written to explain why we need to empathize with her or see her as human. But when I find that men have engaged in behavior or they're merely accused of it, there's no real reflection on men being examined with empathy, trying to be understood. None of that. Hell, even with R. Kelly, we know that apparently his sister had molested him. You try to inject that into a discussion about R. Kelly and watch how quickly you get cussed out, even over a comment stream, because it's important that he has to hold the L. He has to be the monster that has no trauma or no issue that may have spawned this. He just did it because he's a man. And hell, even what we've seen recently, even if he's a so-called good man, right, like Richard Williams, there still has to be a way that he has to be torn down, right? No, I mean, you tell me, has anybody seen a whole lot of this level of nuance even explain a Richard Williams, let alone an R. Kelly?
No,
Never.
not at all.
Whether bad or good, so-called,
There are
men
no
don't
such
seem to
thing as
get
good
that.
men.
Well,
There are no such thing as good men, just opportunistic men.
Yep.
In their minds.
well, if you take a particular issue like this, for example,
Mhm.
like even if you talk about from the jail perspective, if
Mhm.
if you come into jail or prison and it's like people like, okay, you did this, like
Mhm.
even men in jail
Yes.
will frown on you, like
Mhm.
they would like. So there's a code amongst men just
They
across
may
the
kill you.
board as it relates to this particular type of issue.
Yeah, they
Like
may kill you. They
no
may
men
kill
try
you
to protect
outright.
men, huh?
They may kill you outright.
They will kill, yes. So there is a code that comes along with this. So we know in general, as it relates to black men in general, majority of black men do not co-sign defending any black men who engage in this type of behavior. The problem is when you bring it to the mother, there is something that even in the psychological lexicon, people understand that there is this mother myth that really hamstrings a lot of people when it comes to legitimate criticisms of mothers, because the mother myth assumes that if your mother gave birth to you, she naturally loves you, and that is
Absolutely.
false. That is
Absolutely.
one of the most dangerous and pervasive myths that prevents children. And I think actually children, adult children especially, hold really the most power in this particular dynamic because they know the truth. They know what's going on. The problem is that because that mother myth is so powerful and it's so it hamstrings you emotionally, that even if you don't have, especially if you don't have your father around or any people around that really protect you, even though this is your parent and they hurt you, you're scared to let them go in a way that allows you to really fully develop emotionally as an adult, even though you know this person has hurt you. At the same time, you're scared to let them go because the unknown is actually scarier than the dysfunctional mom you have, which is saying a lot.
Absolutely. I want to bring in well, today he's known as the most powerful Negro in the universe. Officer Charles, how you doing, man?
How you doing? Just call me he, bro. Uh,
Weigh in
I was,
on this. Oh, go ahead, man. Go ahead.
no, I'm just saying, I've been to calls where mothers will fight their own daughters over a man.
Mm.
Some of this sugar honey iced tea is shocking, and it doesn't get old. You'll be surprised on how many will set their daughters up to be sacrificial lambs for men.
Mm.
I had to tell a friend of mine, there are certain things you don't understand me. I don't believe the human population. When she was asking me this wording, if I robbed a bank, would you trust anybody? Or if I send somebody some nude photos? I said, I'm an investigator. I don't believe anybody. That's the truth. I look at this phenomenon as sickness. I've said this on my show plenty of times. The first person to put a value on your vagina was your mama.
Yeah. Yep.
The first person to ever do that was your mama. Your first pimp was your mama. Why? Because she told you if a man can't do such and such, he don't need to be with you.
Oh yeah, even before you can walk.
So this here lets you know, and I mean, I know I was born in '82, but hey, guess it was highly affected by the '80s. The kids born in it.
Mm-hmm.
I've had plenty of my friends and girlfriends whose parents were, affected by the drug epidemic heavily. And there's some parents who put their children in spots where the child who's now an adult was molested or pimped out. I'm not going to say names because, from Baltimore, we don't snitch. But especially when it's a boy, that boy is never supposed to ever know anything but pain. He's not supposed to, if an older woman comes on to him, he liked it.
Right.
That's basically how it's handled. How many, do you know how many shelters there are for men who were abused sexually or physically? In America? I want you to take a guess. 1.
Oh, where's this one at?
I forgot where it is. I got to look it up again. But there's 3,000 for women.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at FBI statistics, you're 3 to 5 times more likely to be sexually abused or assaulted in a single mother home. But where are the places where these children can go? Where can they receive help?
Yeah, Artisan is right. I was just about to say this. The shelters for men are prisons.
Yeah.
That's pretty much where they are.
Because you're not allowed to have a bad day. If somebody sexually takes advantage of you, you like it or you're weak. They talk about, you'll see the feminists talk about rape culture, but they won't mention one thing about prison.
Yeah, I actually, I've said this before. When I was a grad student at Temple in Philadelphia, I worked at a place called CORP. I think it was Community Occupation Readiness and Placement Program. And I was responsible for teaching a class from 14 to 17-year-olds who were court ordered to be in my class to get their GED. And of course, they were, all kinds of out of pocket and, all of that. But when I finally got their trust, and I was able to sit down and talk with them, one of the things I found out is at least 2/3 of the class had experienced some type of sexual abuse, and much of it taking place with with their parents' knowledge. And this was one of the things that broke a lot of them because nobody cared. You know what I mean? But they had and I was blown away at how common it was in relation to these boys who had just given up. They were getting into trouble and usually with kids as a teacher, you can kind of see that. You can see the moment when something has happened that changes, a child's behavior. But I was blown away at how completely irrelevant that seemed to be and how these boys were treated, both in terms of law enforcement, but also in terms of what would take place after, where they had all been to juvenile ranches and all. Nobody cared that they had been sexually violated much of the time with their parents' knowledge. Nobody cared. And these
Especially if
boys
it's
would share this with me like, this was the first time they were saying this because nobody ever asked.
Especially if they're boys.
Yeah, absolutely. Because like you said, they're supposed to like it, right?
We're supposed to be these sexual dynamos in many people's heads.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
absolutely.
You wonder why they want to kill every goddamn thing in the world.
You know what? I'm sorry, Charles. I don't mean to cut you off.
Go ahead.
I had a serious heart-to-heart talk with my mom a few months ago, and just talking about growing up, and just telling her just growing up with you in situations was hard. And when I told her I was molested, she kind of was like, "Oh, wow, really?"
Yeah.
And I looked at her and I said, "That's why I didn't tell you." I said, "And that's why a lot of black men are broken." And she was like,
Yes.
"What do you mean?" I said, "Because of that reaction."
Yes. Yes.
And I told her, and I said, but the other reaction when I told her that I told my aunt and my grandmother when I was in my late 20s, early 30s, they got mad and they were getting yelling at me. And I said, reason why I didn't tell you because of that reaction right there.
Mm-hmm.
And they were getting real huffy and they really couldn't do anything because I was an adult. I said, that's why a lot of kids don't sing. Well, you should. I said, see, stop. Kids make mistakes. I said, I was 9 years old. I didn't know any better.
Mm-hmm.
I said, but the thing is, here's the biggest problem and issue is that you turn around, you blame the kid.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, what I need is your understanding.
Right.
And also, I need some empathy.
Mm-hmm.
And I told my mom, and I said, that's the reason why I had issues. And I knew when I was a kid, if you said this and you wouldn't have done anything. This is the reason why we have a lot of broken men and we have a lot of bad relationships and we don't know. And here's another thing. When a child is introduced to sex at a young age, whether it be just sex, doesn't matter. He or she gets conflicted and doesn't understand, and they don't know how to react to it when they get older. They're
Mm-hmm.
either going to get addicted to sex, they're either going to commit a crime themselves, and this vicious cycle comes along, and we have generations of people that do not understand sex and don't know how to have sex normally.
It's
Mm-hmm.
called it's called trying to recapture your sexuality or your innocence.
Exactly. And especially in our neighbor, especially within, no, I should say our neighbor, in our community, we're already a broken people because we have what Dr. Joyce DeGruy called post-traumatic slavery disorder. And now there's a lot of pain and trauma that we carried on generations and generations.
Mm-hmm.
And that pain comes on, and we often have a real effed up idea what sex is.
Yeah.
We often have an effed up idea of just what intimacy is. And we realize intimacy is not always about sex. Intimacy is about having a loving relationship with a person. It's not always sexual. I can have an intimate relationship with all four of you brothers. But a lot of people might think like, ew, that's gay. No, we don't understand it because it's never been taught to us and it's never been shown that way.
Yeah, intimacy is not synonymous with sex. Those are two separate things.
Exactly.
There's a lot
And
of
I'm
different
glad
forms of intimacy.
And I'm
But
glad you said that, Malika, because that's also one of the biggest inhibitors from actually learning how to love yourself and other brothers.
Uh-huh.
Because think about it. You go to every other race of male in this country, they have some male only spots. Not one person will utter that they're gay.
right.
If we have a man's only night or a guy's night out, oh, y'all gay?
Yeah.
You cannot have friendships. You cannot have communal relationships with other men without your sexuality being in question. You can't even talk. You can't even talk and chew bubblegum without your sexuality being questioned. So
Unless it's sports or maybe the barbershop. Like there are these really thin, narrow lanes that are somewhat acceptable. But if you try to broaden that discussion beyond that, it can be a hard road. I want to show you guys another place this can go to. You guys may be more familiar with this cat than I am, but this guy here, Fat Trell, where he talks about being homeless at 16 and stealing toothbrushes and socks nearly every day. Now, I want you to pay attention to the title. Right, this is a YouTube video, but that's the title. Reveals he was homeless at 16, stealing toothbrushes and socks nearly every day. But if you look at the caption I put above that, he says from ages 13 to 17, he sold sex to get by while he was homeless. right? He's selling sex to have a place to sleep, to have a place to shower, to have a meal. And of course, the way he presents it is, I was enjoying myself, I had girls, blah, blah, blah. But what would we call this? Were that a female?
Hmm.
Selling sex for survival, right? How do you have
Well,
that kind of discussion among men without it being dismissed in some kind of fashion by society or by men themselves?
well, in one of the things that you see in war, one of the first things that people do is they define the other side in a way that dehumanizes them.
Mm.
Because once you are able to dehumanize the other side,
Mhm.
then all of the violent, vile things that take place in war, you do it with impunity because you have dehumanized the other side in a way that justifies you doing exactly what you want to do to it.
Right.
So, in this particular regard, from an emotional standpoint, it's actually worse than what we actually went through in terms of the slave experience. Because at least in the slave experience, at least we got free. At least we got out of it. So, in this particular regard, you're treated like a second class citizen
Mm.
amongst the women in your group emotionally. Like
Uh-huh.
you don't have, you're not human enough for me to respect how you react or how you feel based on how I treat you.
Right.
So no matter what you say in terms of my mistreatment of you, well, it doesn't matter anyway because you're not even human to me.
Right.
You're not even human to me. And
Yeah.
so that within itself, like when you really look back, especially as from our experience coming, out of the plantation experience, if you look at the behavior of plantation owners and you look at present day black females, do you really see a difference? Is there really a difference from the emotional damage, from the sexual abuse, as it relates to boys and girls? Is there really, or false charges being leveled against black men by white folks? Is there really any difference in the behavior? I would say no, absolutely not.
Mhm.
I would say no. And
Especially I'm talking about the
within
social role.
itself is shocking. It really is shocking because that's one of the main reasons why we say like, black women are white supremacists out here. Because if you look at the historical record and you compare the present day behavior of black females, you really can't really tell the difference.
Well, and that's why I use the term colonizing agents when I talk about them, because the social role they're being conditioned into is one of governance, right? It is of governing the community, most particularly the men, in a very particular way. And it's not a way that's affirming and humanistic. It's a way that is self-serving in many respects. But again, they're incentivized to do this. They receive material benefits, policy that works in that interest. Whereas our socialization is really more to serve as, at least in the past, it was labor. Um,
Utility.
and that was it. Utility. At this point, it's questionable what social role black men have in regard to expectation. Oh, it looks like we lost Charles. Nevertheless, I hear you. We're talking about when you look at the social role they play. I see the point you're making, and that's something I've been trying to push on the show for us to better understand what's going on. Because otherwise, we just limit it to individual acts of depravity, individual acts of cruelty coming from women. But part of the reason I talk about gender is to make sense of this beyond just individual situations. What are the larger patterns? What are the macro behavioral issues that are going on? What are the societal structures that motivate and condition behavior and worldview in large groups of people? And when you really begin to look at this, the social order dynamic of this is huge and plays a significant role in black dysfunction.
Mm-hmm.
It's not an accident. This is a very purposeful kind of role being played out. Okay. It looks like you came back in. Here we go. But yeah.
I'm back.
So, I'm curious, from y'all, as you reflect on this dynamic, of men entering situations, especially obviously we're talking about single mothers with daughters of varying ages, whatnot. I'm always, extremely careful about navigating any situation involving daughters because I know how it doesn't have to take much. Again, just an accusation is enough. It doesn't mean you have to have done something for your life to be
Mhm.
destroyed. But in this instance, where we're talking about men who are being seduced or offered into situations like this, what advice, and maybe I should frame it this way, what advice would you all have for men who haven't experienced that yet, but may one day find themselves in a situation where they're being offered? What would you suggest that they take into account?
Walk out real slow and start recording and acknowledge that you don't want any parts of this.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm sorry. Like, a lot of men be like, why would I record a chick acting crazy? Because that's,
It depends on if it's subtle. What I did, I pretended like I didn't hear it.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah, I would say that. Yeah, if it's subtle.
Yeah, it's real subtle. I pretend like I didn't hear it, like it
And
went
and,
right over my
and
head.
ease on out of it too.
Yes, you
Ease
do.
on back on out of that.
Yeah.
ease on down the road.
Ease
Like,
on
man,
down the road, bro.
Yeah. Then once you get around the corner, run, Forrest, run.
Yeah,
I
boy.
was thinking the same thing, BGS.
For real.
do you know how
Especially
much
nowadays.
power?
Yeah.
Do you know how much power you would give them? Like, Jesus Christ, you don't even want
Yeah.
to. Like, no, like hell. If I get married to a woman, I don't want to see her kids till 5 years later, man. Shit. Like,
Mm-hmm.
oh,
Look, I was at a meeting some years ago, and it was an elder black woman, and she was in her 70s. And when she came in, she was upset because her granddaughter was arguing with her boyfriend in public, and she was pissed.
Mm.
And she scolded her, and she scolded her because she was basically saying that you don't argue with your man in public, blah 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 blah. And she got on the guy too because she was telling him, man, don't take that.
Mm.
She was telling him not to take it from her.
Okay.
And this I'll never forget this because there was a lot of those brothers around. And she said, I'm gonna tell y'all black men something right now. She said, y'all need to leave these black women alone.
Mm.
This was 2012.
Okay.
She said, y'all need to leave these black women alone. She said, I can't stand to see a woman disrespect her man. She said, especially in public. She said, I can't stand it. She said, you wait till you get home and have a conversation with your man. She said, but as far as I'm concerned, she's like, these women ain't no good. She said, I've known black women who falsely accused black men of molesting their children and they knew they didn't do it.
Mm.
This woman was in her 70s saying that. She's like, if I was y'all, she said, I would go overseas somewhere or find some women somewhere else. She said, these women here, they ain't got it. They ain't got it. And it was just like deathly silence around, like, because you just couldn't believe that an elder black woman would have come so clean like that. It really irked her to see her granddaughter do that because she was embarrassed by it. She came from a different school of thought, and she just could not like take it. Like it really, and it just made her just really just come out the box. And she's like, if y'all know what I know, y'all will leave these women alone. And of course, you had some dude, like, even though it was an elder woman speaking, like, it was dudes that was still pushing back, like, well, what about the no good dudes? I was like, nah. I said, I said, you hearing what she's saying? I said, we don't get an insight like this in that side. I said, y'all better listen to what this woman is saying. And she kept it all the way 100 when she said that. She said, leave them alone.
you know, Rael, that's shocking that it's always got to be one dude to open up his mouth. What about the no good dude? Shut the hell up.
Well, and that's what I meant earlier when I was saying my problem in introducing this subject. One of the problems I had with the responses was that you could tell people were so uncomfortable with
Mm-hmm.
me placing a man in a position of vulnerability. We have such a gynofocal way of looking at things that it has to be on her. And so you had people who were trying to dismiss what I was saying to make him the villain in the dynamic. And then you saw men in the comments trying to support that because that's the narrative we've been conditioned into. We're
You
conditioned
know,
into prioritizing her. But when you actually start to look at black male vulnerability, men and women get uncomfortable because there's something wrong with
Right.
looking at it that way. Even if black men find themselves more vulnerable than really any other demographic you can really think.
yes, most definitely.
You
You know
can
what the
end up
funny
going
thing?
to jail for being offered this dynamic.
Yes.
Not to say you accepted it, simply that you were offered. And so, for me, it's frustrating to watch, people go out of their way to dismiss this. But go ahead, Malika. I want you to go ahead and make your point because I want to show you guys something that speaks to something that we just heard. But go ahead.
Here's something that I realized that we black men deal with these two phrases. We are the sin eaters of the world, and we suffer from catch 22 syndrome. Damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Right. Right.
Remember some years back that white DJ in North Carolina, he had sex with so many of these
Right.
black women for a span of 5 to 6 years.
Yeah.
And you heard women online saying, but where's the men at? Where's that? And I'm like, and I had to laugh. And I said, even when black men this is the 21st century. These women willingly had sex with this man. But somehow we still have to be the blame. It doesn't matter. You're going to be the sin eater. All 5 of us, it's the blame because we should have. But when you go back and you say, well, where was the father at doing this when he couldn't cover them and he made sure that this wouldn't happen? Well, it's a whole hubba, a bunch of beatboxing and a bunch of stuttering. But one thing I realized, and I had to tell this to somebody, we've been conditioned to be the sin eaters and to be the eaters of the catch-21 syndrome. Because that's the way it's supposed to be. Because we're not seen as human. Like you said, we're concuserves. A concuserve has to eat that out. We're supposed to take that L. We're supposed to carry that L like Atlas holding the world on his shoulders.
And if you try to push to be understood beyond that, it makes people so uncomfortable, they don't know what to do with it. Now, Donnie in the comments, he kind of knows exactly, I think he called exactly what I was starting to pull up. You guys have seen this example. And I'll share the image here. You've seen this example from Ayanla Fix My Life, right?
Right. Yep.
Remember this? This was Monzel, right? And he was talking about being falsely accused by his wife. I'm going to play a little clip from an interview with Ayanla about this. It's a little less than 2 minutes. Hopefully you guys can hear it. My equipment is acting weird. But let's see. Let me turn the sound up and let's see if you guys can hear it.
Take me to the day when you find out that you've been accused of.
Now, can you guys hear that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, here we go.
Sexually molesting your daughters.
So I go answer the phone. It's Yvonne in a fit. What did you do to my daughter? So I was like, what's wrong with Whitney? And she, you done did some blood in her drawers and this and that. So I hop in the truck, go over there. I just grabbed Whitney. I said, Whitney, has anybody touched you in your private place? No, Daddy. I said, well, okay, what we gonna do, we gonna go over here to the hospital and let them check you out. You ain't taking my child nowhere. I had to fight my way out of there. I'm heading to the hospital. I get maybe a mile, and here come the police. It's around my truck. So they come to the door, because I need to get my daughter to the hospital. Oh no, Mr. Hughes, we got a report that you done kidnapped her. So,
yeah. Get a tissue, mister. Come here. Come on. Let's sit through it. Just turn your back. Sit through it. Because you went through it one time by yourself. We're going to work it all the way through. Yeah. Tell me what that is. What is that? Is that anger, sadness? What is it?
It's all that.
Yeah.
Right. Now that's just the clip of him trying to tell the story of what happened when his wife falsely accused him of violating their daughter. That's not even the clip where he rejects her, bullshit apology to him.
Mm-hmm.
But the point I'm getting at by showing or by playing that is, again, we don't fathom how many men find themselves vulnerable in this respect. Now, if a father can be vulnerable to a wife who's vindictive and angry and can make up this kind of story, what happens to a stranger who's walked into a situation where a woman is offering herself and her daughter? What kinds of things might she be able to do with the benefit of public assumption that she's right and that anything she says is true? What can a stranger do to a man if a wife can do this to a husband and a father of a daughter?
You were going to jail, son. Okay.
Yeah. This is what men have to grapple with in this respect, and we don't know how to frame it beyond this. I mean, just you can hear it in the sound of his voice how broken he was behind just the accusation. Just the accusation.
And the authorities, man, acting as a security force for the mother.
Absolutely. Right. She's a proxy, right, to that. Somebody asked me to put the link. I think that's AB. I'll put the link for that in the chat. And it's not a coincidence that Ayanlis basically quit.
Nope.
Oh, no.
I think she saw too much of this, but go ahead.
I've actually posted the part when they had the lie detector and she tried to give her sorry ass excuse of an apology.
Mm-hmm.
She didn't even apologize. What she said was, "Why didn't you fight harder?
Mm.
Why did you fight harder?"
Yeah.
Boy.
And I know it took the power of Grayskull to keep from slapping her head off her shoulders.
I'm trying to tell you, boy.
Because
why'd you fight harder? See, this is the. I'm sorry, gentlemen. This is the bullshit that fucking gets on my nerves. Fight harder.
Yeah.
The lack of accountability that's there, and this is one thing I gotta say sometimes to our women, and you wonder why you're alone. You wonder why we are at odds.
Yeah.
You wonder why I didn't fight harder. You ruined a man's life, or almost ruined a man's life, but you don't want to be held accountable for you're ruining someone's life because of your own issues. She's got issues herself because she's been damaged from her family and her family's family. And now you damage this man, and you damage your children. But now at an age that you're realizing that you fucked up. And that's all you can bring out and say, why didn't you fight harder? Get the fuck out of here.
I know a guy when I used to be on Facebook. He told me a story about one of his friends. Him and his wife ended up splitting up. Him and his daughter had a great relationship with each other. And he ended up getting with another woman. And he said that when he took his daughter back home, when he had the other female in the car with him. And he said, as he was about to pull off, he was just looking at his ex-wife on the porch. And and all she was just doing was just giving him the meanest mug ever. And he knew something was going to come. One day he get a knock on the door from the police, arresting him for allegedly molesting his own daughter. Now, when it came to time to go to court, she didn't want to show up. So that's when they knew, like, okay, this was a lie. So they dropped the charges. This dude planned her murder.
Wow.
He planned it out to the T.
Right.
He had already clicked in the mind and was like, I'm going to prison forever, but I'm taking this mug out. And fortunately, my dude talked him out of it.
Yeah.
He talked him out of it because he had already planned it.
Right.
I mean, he had lined it up, everything. He had already clicked in that direction.
Right.
And, you know, one thing I try to tell females, I'm like, these feminists might make you think that you're equal to men, but when that man clicks to that dark side, you better be on the moon.
I can tell you. I can tell you
when he coming, and he ain't stopping.
Wow, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
I'm saying I can probably say with confidence that every man on here on this screen has had to talk someone down from that. You got two law enforcement officers. I can tell you I have, and you know I just know BGS. I've never asked him that before, but I'm pretty sure.
I've had to be. I'll be very candid. Not only have I talked several men from them point, I had to be talked from that point.
Oh yeah,
boy.
Because it was like, it's something like, I swear to God, like I'm gonna do an experiment, and I'm gonna get like the Nobel Peace Prize to understand why do you bitches always get these ratchet ass niggas? Like why? Y'all, it's not like y'all go to the colleges, y'all go to the frats, y'all gotta go to the goddamn gutter to find other guys to date.
Well, that's what they want.
But it's also a control mechanism. Because the kind of men we're talking about, you know, can be controlled. As a matter of fact, I think I've said it several times. I had a former student reach out to me months ago, and he said, "You were right, Doc." He said, "My boy, who's an ex-con, has recently gotten married. He came home late. His wife was angry at him. And so she called the police and fabricated a story to get him sent back to jail. This man had been out of jail, started a business, built himself up. But one phone call by an angry wife, and he's back in jail. But that whole dynamic is a control mechanism because you can't easily do that with somebody that isn't vulnerable to that. You can still do it, but it's not as easy. And I wanted to show this. I'm going to back this up a minute because we were talking about this a few moments ago. This is a meme that I've been seeing all over for this last couple weeks that speaks to what we were talking about. It says, "Stop telling fathers they should have fought harder to see their children and start asking mothers why did they have to fight at all." How prevalent, how prevalent this has been for men, most particularly black men, that you can have these kind of memes up because men are dealing with this. Too many men are dealing with this, but that's the thing. Their parenting is obstructed by institutions that they have no impact or control over. And so when we talk about what kind of men women tend to be drawn to most, we find that it tends to be men that can be controlled by proxy through institutions they don't control. You're not going to be able to do that to a Charles Faulkner. You're not going to be able to do that to, you know, the brothers on the street. Brothers who have gotten themselves together, it's much harder to do that with. But if you take a cat off the street, especially like one of the gentlemen I posted earlier, the homeless gentleman who was using sex, you can have a baby from him and do all kinds of things to put him in line to service your interests. You can't do that with successful men or men who have at least achieved a modicum of stability. It's much more difficult.
Right. Well, I was in the barbershop some months ago, and one of the customers, my barber services, he came in and he was a former cop, and he was talking about we got to talking about mental health, and because my barber was telling me he was going to get counseling, and I was like, you know, good job, man. You know, I was giving him some support. I was like, hey, man, that's courageous, man. Good job. And the cop was the one who actually told him about getting the counseling, and he listened to him. And so we got on the subject of, you know, obviously relationships, and we got on domestic violence. And he told us a story about a brother who had ended up getting into it with his chick. And when he came there, when he came to the scene, the chick, she had her story, obviously. So he went to the brother and he was like, well, what happened? He was like, man, I don't talk to 12. He was like, okay. He was like, all right, well, I'm not going to arrest you. I'm just going to put the cuffs on you. I'm gonna put you in the car. The neighbor came to the officer and said, I got something to show you. He pulled out his camera phone and he showed the entire scene of them. He showed this woman beating herself in the face with a frying pan, saying, I'm gonna get you locked up. I'm gonna get you locked up.
Yeah.
So he comes back to the brothers like, yo, man, why didn't you say this happened? He was like, I'm about ready to lock you up. And you didn't even do anything wrong. He was like, man, I just don't really trust the police, does such and such and such and such. And so he saw some red on his shirt. He was like, man, lift your shirt up. Man, the chick had stabbed him too.
I don't want to tell you how many fucking times I've been told this shit, and I've been like, let me back up for a minute. The cop who pulled him up was black, right?
The one who arrived on the scene, yeah, he was a black guy.
What did I tell you on my channel? 3 ways we should look at black men. My brother, my champion, my savior. That was a white dude. He would have went to jail.
Yep.
And how long, Dr. T and others, have I talked about we need more brothers in that position? How long? But yet I constantly get this argumentative disposition of why. And look at this. Brothers won't even tell. There's so many times, I swear to God, when I'm fully done with this law enforcement shit, I'm probably going to need more help than anybody.
Wow.
Because I've seen, what haven't I, between Baghdad and Baltimore, what haven't I seen?
Oh. That's a local call.
That's a damn local call. Right, the only difference is you got club music and I can understand what the hell people are saying. And crab cakes. And I'm gonna say this.
Your volume went down, Charles.
But I'm gonna say this, fellas. A lot of times, we as black men are not allowed to be victims. We're not allowed to feel pain. We're not allowed to even bleed. Thank God that another neighbor cared about him so much to video record that crazy bitch, because that's calling her by a proper title. I've been on scenes when the chick said, he beat me up. Okay, you have no marks on him, but he scratched the fuck up. He's cut. I'm not a tool like for a carpenter to be used. I'm not an automatron. I'm not some android that you can plug up and do your dirty work for you. No, that's why I tell you, I don't believe shit. I investigate. A lot of people don't want to listen to me. Like, why would you need to investigate? Because if someone told me something about a friend of mine, okay, you're gonna have to prove it to me. You're gonna have to prove it to me because I already know this person's character. You're gonna have to show me tangible proof. And that's the point and principle I want to get at. For so long, we have not made the black women of our community bring up tangible proof that they're abused, that they're not protected. That's bullshit. I know brothers who stuck their necks out for women they didn't even know. Lady was in a car accident. You seen 5 brothers pull her out. I've seen when women were about to get harassed, brothers stepping in between her and her boyfriend. Show me something that does not exist. You lying women.
I'll show you something that don't exist. People come to our aid, brother. I'll show you something that doesn't exist.
You don't have aid. That's the problem. You don't have aid. You're a creature that does not deserve pity, help, empathy, sympathy. You deserve nothing but the air that God gave you, and that's sometimes.
You know, it really does hurt me to make this statement, but it needs to be said because I'm tired of it being swept under the rug. They're right about one thing. There is a lot of abuse of our daughters, incest, and mother's boyfriend. But here's what they're not talking about. It's only happening because the women keep the secrets.
Okay.
Half the time they're complicit. That's the
yes.
problem.
They're either keeping the secret or they just don't care.
How many brothers that that have done this kind of stuff and went through what we went through, where the woman actually implicitly suggested that you may be able to, my little girl's open to you having sex with her.
Ooh.
But then when it comes out, all of a sudden, no, I never said that.
Mm,
I didn't know he was doing it. Even though the little girl is telling her mother what's going on in the house.
mm. That's actually something we do hear a little bit about, and I know I've heard it in the
Hmm.
academy. Daughters who
Mm-hmm.
were not believed, and I've
Hmm.
I've dealt with that, and I've been
Hmm.
with women who've talked about having been touched and violated and not believed.
Hmm.
But rarely have I heard anybody talk about mothers who initiated or supported.
Hmm.
Rarely, if ever.
Do you think the mother's going to admit that she initiated it?
Absolutely
No,
not.
no, of
Yeah.
course not.
No.
It
Now.
will it will basically be an undoing of her power base. The
Mhm.
black moms have de facto become the power base based on a single mom paradigm. They
Hmm.
have
Mhm.
become the power structure within itself. I've been saying for a long time that this gender back and forth thing has actually obscured the untold damage that's actually being perpetrated against black children.
Hmm.
Mhm.
We can't even get to this conversation because the gender war stuff is so powerful.
Hmm.
But that's why I think that that's actually where a lot of the actual accountability is going to come from, especially when it comes to a lot of these women, because many of these women know where the dead bodies are. Many of these women have
Mhm.
participated. They have participated in their moms cheating on their dads,
Hmm.
hiding the secrets,
Yeah.
hiding the secrets of them cheating on their stepdads. They know where all the dead bodies are buried. But the problem is that unlike the males, the mothers make the daughters feel like they're an extension of themselves. So to tell on mom is in a way betraying yourself because you're not your separate person. But if the daughter, because I saw this actually on paternity court one time, where a daughter realized her mom and dad, her mama who she thought was her dad, got into it, and her stepdad made a comment basically saying she wasn't his real daughter. So she wanted to go to court and see. So she took him to court, and come to find out, her mom was a young, back in the day, was a thot and was getting around, and she found out that her stepfather was not her real father. And when she started seeing when she started seeing, hearing that how loose her mom was, she was like, "Oh my God, you're nasty!" Like, "Oh my God, that's disgusting." And you could just see the shame on her mom's face because her daughter was like, "You wow, like I don't support that. I don't condone that." And a lot of times we don't
Mhm.
realize that a lot of times the parent-child relationship, a lot of people think that the power is in the parent. Yes, it can hurt children to be rejected by their parent, but nothing hurts parents, especially these types of moms. Nothing hurts them than the outright rejection of them as a mother, because you're not just rejecting them as a parent. You're rejecting them as an entire being. Like it didn't matter if they was a parent or just a regular person. You're
Mhm.
saying that you want absolutely nothing to do with them, and you would rather live apart from them than have a relationship with them. And for a parent, that's the ultimate. That's the ultimate kind of pain, to know that no matter how much you abuse this child sees you for who you really are, and you ain't gonna even take it anymore. And now people want to see, like, well, why your daughter don't come around no more? Why your son
Yeah.
don't come around anymore?
Yeah.
Now you're gonna have
Mhm.
to explain that now.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Now I want to bring Aku into this because he actually left for class. He came up on the screen but had to leave for class, and he's coming back in. Brother, can you hear us?
Yes, I can, guys. Greetings.
Greetings. Go ahead and chime
So,
in on it.
Ryle, you say it in a way that how this is how we say it in How we always say it in Jamaica. If women decided tomorrow that gangsters, thugs, and men of low quality would not get sex. Churches would be filled the next day, and crime would go down to nothing. So
Okay.
it basically says that if women base their relationship and most their intimacy choices on good men, crime and certain things would disappear. Because in Jamaica, in the impoverished areas, the violence-filled areas that we call the ghetto, the onus or the big focus is on when the Don calls for these young children.
Turn
But
your
you
YouTube
never
turn your
see.
turn your
Oh,
YouTube off.
my YouTube is off, so
Somebody has the
I'm not.
YouTube
I
off.
don't.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
somebody has a feed on.
Mm,
Go ahead.
yeah.
Go ahead, man.
So the Don is the one who sometimes calls for the children, but you never hear the other side where these Dons are offered the children in terms of for benefits. Because let's be frank, a lot of times when women have a multitude of choices, they're gonna choose the easy route.
Mm.
And this is one of the ones that we encounter a lot in Jamaica. That some women are, as soon as the child starts to grow buds, start to grow some breast, she's sipped off. 10, 11, 12. As soon as she starts to mature, you offer her first time to the Don in return for favors and the things. And that part is completely ignored. The person who is vilified is the Don and not the mother along with it.
Yeah.
Mm.
And I got an opinion on this too. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I think to some degree, on the topic, peace to everybody in the chat. I think to some degree, mothers offering their daughters is a ritualistic, uh, it's a ritualistic sexual initiation to some degree, and I think in a lot of ways it's based on control. I think in a lot of ways, older women know that having these early experiences will somehow damage them, so as that the older woman will have some power and control over them. You know, in India, I think I can't really put it together, but to some degree in India, older women support, I think to some degree, the younger women getting flogged and stoned and all of that stuff because none of the older women speak out against the younger women getting abused. None of them speak out against it. It's always the younger women that are up in arms about abuse. The older women are okay with it because they understand that the sexual marketplace value is going down.
Mm.
So the only way to compete with these younger women is through allowing them to be abused.
Mm. Mm.
And misery loves company.
Yes.
Yep. Yes.
Well, two things I want to touch on, because one of the things we got to start doing on one level or another, and I think brothers, especially on this panel, have been doing this for a minute, is offering solutions. And it's not to suggest that any one solution is the answer to all of it, but offering a variety of ideas. And one of the things I would say is that there are at least two channels that we can look at in terms of responding to the position Black men find themselves in this kind of situation. There's a social dynamic, and then there's a political dynamic. Socially, and I think we're seeing this, we need to let Black men know you do not have to accept this type of treatment. You can walk away. There is a point where you should walk away, which is something, and I know that sounds simplistic, but when I was growing up, that was not a narrative that we got. We got what
Exactly.
Iyanla Van Zant used to tell us: you have to stay in it, you have to stick through it, you have to stay with her no matter the dysfunction. You have to, no. There is an opportunity that Black men can take upon themselves to not get into situations that they don't want to be in. And as simplistic as that sounds, it's something that we often have to give each other permission to do because we were told for so long to do the opposite. So socially, actually making a choice and not being apologetic about it If you don't want to put yourself in a vulnerable situation, you shouldn't be shamed into doing so. Whatever. So that's one dynamic, and there's a lot more to it, but I'm just putting it on the table. The other one is political, and this is something that a number of y'all are familiar with. We started this on the Onyx, the Onyx Report last year. Let me get it up on the screen. This is the black male political agenda, and this is point F. Actually, it's this point it's 6F, and there's probably about 14 different points with multiple sections to it, but this is 6F, and it deals with false accusations, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is and so basically what this whole thing is it's a list of policy ideas that are tailored to black men's experience. I did not write these. You all contributed every point on here to this list. Some of the brothers on the panel, like BGS, have contributed to this list. But this particular point says there should be clear and more stringent punishments for filing false charges against black men. Knowing that black men are denigrated, stereotyped, and wrongfully convicted more than and to greater degrees than others, such accusations can have a far-reaching and detrimental impact on black men's lives. Black men are the most exonerated group due to false accusations, according to the National Registry of Exonerations, Newkirk Center for Science and Society, University of California, Irvine. They state, African Americans are only 13% of the American population, but a majority of innocent defendants wrongfully convicted in crimes and later exonerated. They constitute 47% of the 1,900 exonerations listed in the National Registry of Exonerations as of October 2016. And the great majority, more than 1,800 additional innocent defendants who were framed and convicted of crimes in 15 large-scale police scandals and later cleared in group exonerations. Thus, whimsically dangerous charges with questionable and unreliable evidence or no evidence at all should be harshly dealt with to dissuade others from repeating this act against an already vulnerable population. So we need to push for policy that actually advocates for black males. And then we also need to operate socially in a manner where we are willing to abstain from dysfunctional relationships and walk away for the benefit of black males. I just want to put that on the table as far as solutions. There are responses we can have to this, but we have to first acknowledge that this is an issue. We have to and understand, when I brought this scenario up of mothers offering daughters, the biggest problem I think people had was accepting that men could be vulnerable. They kept finding ways to switch it back to focus on her. And I'm saying there's a time and a place to do all of that. But can you just sit in this moment of acknowledging black male vulnerability? And people had real difficulty with that. They were far more comfortable blaming black men than they were.
Even black men have a problem with it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Dr. Hasan, I say it all the time on your show. Women are innately deified and men are innately demonized in today's society.
Yes.
It's a
Very true.
reflex. It's a reflex.
Yes.
It's gotten to the point where it's a reflex action. You cannot see a situation where the man appears innocent and not have the thought pass through your mind, he must have done something to do it to her. And that is a big issue, because even if you look at the situation like this, just as how you just said, a lot of women are now choosing men that have a first or second strike or are on probation to be in relationships with.
Yes.
Why? Because as soon as he doesn't act right,
yes,
one phone call and he's back in jail.
Yes.
And that is held over the man's head for you to act right. These women can choose good men, or they can give these men a chance. But what? They want to control the man, and the man must operate under her rules.
But let me add something to that, brother, because you're right. If he's also homeless, right? So not only maybe an ex-con, but homeless or unemployed, on the surface, it looks like she's being altruistic, right? I'm with this man who's struggling and I'm supporting my man. It presents that way. But as you pointed out, he's vulnerable. So if he doesn't have any place else to go, if he's unemployed or any of those kind of things, and there are many of you listening to this broadcast who have been in periods of vulnerability like that in your life, you know that staying with this person, you are basically at her whim, right? I used to tell a boy of mine who was in a situation like that. They said, you are one argument away from being back on a park bench. And this is why it's so important that Black men need to establish their own situation. Because if you find yourself vulnerable and having to rely on a woman, especially in a scenario like that, you're absolutely right. You're that much more vulnerable, and she has that much more control, which may have been the reason she sought you out in the first place.
Exactly.
Yeah, especially if she wanted a child. It's hard to get an upstanding man who's standing on his own 2 feet to just give you a child arbitrarily, but you can get that from somebody who's unstable. So now you have a child, he's living in your house, but you're the primary breadwinner. And if he doesn't do what you say, there are all kind of mechanisms at play, from, from kicking him out to involving the law. Hell, I've heard of, in divorces, attorneys are telling women to file false charges of abuse or sexual assault so that she can get full custody.
You're going too far.
Telling
YouTube videos are there. YouTube videos are there. Women are training other women, doctor, to do this. There are videos out there training women to do this. First step, file an accusation against them for abuse, file an accusation of domestic violence. Continue, sir. Yes.
No, you're absolutely right. And this is why we have to have conversations that first affirm that this is happening to men. And secondly, to talk about a variety of solutions and options that are available to men. Because if you have to figure this stuff out by yourself, you're up a creek. You need to actually confer with other Black men who've been in this situation and have conversations about what can be done. Because believe me, the people that I see who are levying false charges and taking people to court for, family matter issues, they've gotten counsel from mothers, from grandmothers, from aunts, from uncles, from television to media, from movies, you name it. We need to actually talk to other brothers who have gone through this and get counsel. Listen to the brothers that are dealing with this. And especially in regard to the law, I highly suggest people listen to Dennis Sperling and the lead attorney. And talk, especially in regard to divorce and family court matters. Listen to those brothers, because you'll find few attorneys that are public that are willing to talk about the vulnerability of Black men and what options they may have to fight back against some of this. But anybody else want to chime in on this? Because we're going to probably close this down in a minute. Any other thoughts, reflections you want to offer to the audience about these kind of scenarios?
Brothers, we gotta start having more value for ourselves. First of all, we need to police our penises. We need to have sexual discipline. That's one of the biggest things which leads us into these scenarios and situations that often lead us into prison or lead us into situations like that.
Situationships.
And first of all, another thing is, and I know this sounds like a broken record, but you need to vet women. And vetting women is not just 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, 4 weeks. No, a vetting process is constantly doing this. Thing is, like, when you see red flags of certain things, if you're around a woman and she has a teenage daughter and she allows her teenage daughter to walk around with very skimpy clothes on.
Oh no, that's a automatic red flag.
If you notice that she, perfect example, if her daughter, they got music on, if her daughter's twerking in front of you. If you notice that this woman if this woman and her daughter speak freely about sex, if you come over to a woman's house and you're having sex with her, but her child is up and downstairs and she can hear that, that's a red flag. If you are dating a woman and she has a child that's between the ages of 5 and early preteen years, and she wants to go out with you during a weekday, and she's looking for a babysitter, and she wants to spend the night over your house, and she wants to do this, that's a red flag. If she wants you to come over her house and you want to have them booty call hours and you notice that her children are up, or if you notice that you're coming downstairs and the daughter's looking at you and laughing and she says, I heard y'all having sex, that's a red flag. You're not the only one that has been there and has done it. This is stuff that we have to see. But the problem is, men, we get caught up. We get caught up in the sex. We get caught up in that. And women know that. But this is the thing that we need to be careful. And also just how free this woman allows her daughter or her children to act around you. How free this child acts. This is, first of all, we're in the 21st century where young ladies and just women are putting stuff online. And if you can see this young lady, if she's doing a bunch of selfies or this certain stuff, there has to be something inside you that's making you feel uncomfortable. Like what I said earlier, I was 21 or 24 years old, and I'm going into this speakeasy, but I'm seeing this mother and daughter, and I'm feeling uncomfortable. Even though that was just a stripper, but I'm uncomfortable. Well, I'm like, no, this is sick. That this is an antenna or a red flag that has to go where you gotta go, because you don't want to be caught up in situations like this. And you have to understand, if she's so free, and you have to understand this, we're dealing with women that have no morals, no standards. And also, if you are continuing to entertain this and you're just worried about getting the ass or getting the pussy, you're a dude that has no morals and standards. And all you need is something to happen, something that this goes wrong, something that this doesn't go right, and you're caught in the middle of it. And
I got a story. You mentioned about letting the daughters do any kind of thing. I was at church. Yeah, that's right. They sat me at church. I kid you not. This girl, I think she was about 3 or 4 at the time, tried to drag me into the women's bathroom because she wanted somebody to go to the bathroom with her. And naturally, I looked at the mother like, "What the hell?" And she's like, "She wanted you to go to the bathroom." She tried it again. I told the girl myself, "Look, I am a guy. It is not appropriate for me to take you to the bathroom." And I'm not dating your mother either. It is totally inappropriate for me to take you to the bathroom. I'm not going to do it.
I'm not dating your mother either.
I thought about it, but and ironically, my mother was not a person that cussed, but that's the first time I ever heard my mother say, "Oh hell no, you ain't doing that. You can't touch her." I got the hood out, and she's like, "Oh hell no, you ain't doing that."
I was 7 years old when I first saw a little black girls trying to drag a little boy that thought they were cute into the bathroom. So this is common. This is not unusual. I wish it was. This is not a modern occurrence.
And fathers have to definitely be very careful, because look, once you've raised a child, you know, there's certain things that are on automatic for me. If I have a baby around me, I can change diapers. It's something I might just go into in father mode, but you got to stop and be like, wait a minute, what's this situation? Is this safe for me to do? Because how people look at black men, you're already subject to their opinion, and you may just be operating as a father. You know what I mean? But you have to be careful.
Right. Well, I think that in this day and age, just because, I mean, there's just a dearth of information that's dealing with psychological issues, the mental health issues, and I'm not talking about when people just. I don't like people making a mockery of mental health. But I mean actual issues where people have actually delved in and studying. I think America just overall is about 100 years behind the psychological research that exists already. For men, I think a lot of times our minds is trained to see the problems in the environment and try to solve it. That's just the sociological aspect of who we are. But in terms of you individually, I think it's incumbent upon black men to get much more knowledgeable about what's narcissistic behavior, the different types of narcissists as it relates to women. Borderline personality disorder. What are the different types of borderline personality disorder women that you can come across out there? Because you're going to need to be aware of the type of behaviors that you're seeing. I'm not saying you have to be Dr. Phil or anybody, but you're going to need to at least be able to recognize the signs of these types, because that can help prevent you. Yeah, she got a nice big butt and a smile, but you can't trust that. You know what I'm saying? Because she's fitting these particular prototypes. Matter of fact, I don't care if you have to get a printout and write down all of the behavior type patterns and put it on your refrigerator every day so you can see it, so it can get ingrained in your consciousness. So when you're out here, you're at least on the lookout, like just make sure, okay, when you see that behavior be amplified, you know what you're dealing with, and you just cut your losses. And hopefully you can cut your losses early because you was able to recognize the signs early and not even get engaged in any kind of interaction with that particular female. Men have to be much more protective of their spaces. One of the things I've learned more so than anything, and since I've been out of my parents' house, women have a very hard time respecting men's boundaries.
Yes, they do.
You men have to really set the tone from the beginning and let a woman know what you will not tolerate, what you're willing to tolerate. And if she crosses those boundaries that you're not going to tolerate, especially early on, cut it, especially if you explain it. Because if you've explained it to her and she just says, well, I just wanted to just text you. I know you said that you were going to be busy, but I just wanted to text you anyway. Cut it. Cut it off. She's letting you know off the top that she doesn't respect your time. And as a man, you have a right to set your boundaries. Even in the psychological research, this is very important because many times these women do not respect boundaries, and they will think that it's okay to just come across you and I should be able to. I mean, I've had women say like, "Man, you're the first man that ever told me no." Matter of fact, I had an ex who we got into an argument one time, and she told me to shut up, and I let loose on her, and we got into it. And then after we calmed down and talked, when we talked about it, she said, "Well, me and my sister argue all the time, and we tell each other to shut up." And I was like, "I'm not your sister. Like, you got a whole different interaction."
Right.
And then she came back and said, "Well, I didn't know black men wanted to be respected."
Whoa!
That's a red flag.
Wow.
What?
And she was like 28 when she said this. She was like 28 when she said this.
Wow. I believe it though. I believe it because that's what they've been taught.
Yes, you see, now this sums it up. From Black Gynarchy, Riles, and from your play cousin. This is the basic gist of all of this. And we're talking about vetting, mental illness, and everything. The Brittany Renners, the Blueface situation, the baby situation. There are women coming into our lives, coming and staying in our houses and into our beds that should never have been through the front door. That should never have even gotten a call or a text from us. If our vetting process was strong. If we were looking at these things objectively and not just because she has a big butt and a smile, some of these, if you could have looked past that, some of these women would never have even gotten the first hello.
I'm just going to tell you this part. Black men have no standards. Black women have no shame.
That's true. That's true.
That's true. You're the garbage bit of the dating world. If you don't want to stop treating it, stop taking that BS, man. People get mad and they get saucy when I say it, but
the truth hurts. I ain't gonna lie, it hurts, but it's the truth.
Hurts like a body shot, man. You ever been knocked out on standing up on your body?
No, it hurts like getting kicked in the nuts.
No,
Hey,
no, body
Yeah.
shot. When
No.
you're
Yeah.
conscious and you're like, I
A
can't
kidney punch
stand
will
up.
put you on your knees.
Yeah. And black women
Yep.
think that their vaginas are 80s crack.
yes.
That's
Wow.
more like
Better than
Put this
that.
out
like
here.
say, that
Gold.
shit's more like 60s heroin.
Nah, man.
Oh, man.
I'm
That's
a
the
say
old time
all
Jamaican
right.
marijuana right there.
All right. I think Doc's saying it's closing thoughts time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Give us some
Yeah.
closing
It's
thoughts,
fine.
fellas. And then as you do, go ahead and check yourself out so the next person can go ahead and do it. But closing thoughts, anybody?
All right.
Brothers, just protect yourselves. Utilize platforms like this to realize like we must protect ourselves, not just young guys, but older men too. We got a lot to lose. And it's just being careful and cautious. We're not bashing on women, it's just being careful.
Mhm.
You know, just brothers, think with the right head. And also just be and just and just be aware of the red flags of how the way people move and how the way situations are. And I'm speaking from experience. I've done a lot of dumb shit in my past. But just think, brothers, think, because it can get you doing a bid in prison. It can get you your life. So, brothers, just think. And no woman is worth giving up your life and giving up your freedom for.
Yeah. Appreciate that, man. And that was important. I want to interject this real quick because I feel like I'm called to say this. I'm still on this thing with children. I was watching an old Bill Cosby movie, and this is not about Bill Cosby. I was watching Let's Do It Again. And there was a scene in there toward the beginning where he was in a public space. He was sitting there and a little girl walked up to him. And he picked the girl up, put the girl on his lap, pulled out a piece of paper and a pencil, and took her hand and started to draw the letters of the alphabet and the numbers. His immediate response to this little cute girl that walked up to him was to start teaching her letters and numbers. And I saw that scene and I reflected on it. And I said, we're close to 50 years later. And as black men in a public space, you can't do that.
No, you cannot.
No.
You dare not.
As innocent as you may be, as fatherly a gesture as it may be, you can find yourself going back to what Malika said, walking out, going to jail, or being falsely accused over something that is entirely innocent. I don't know why I'm called to say that right now. Maybe somebody needs to hear it before you do something, but that's how quickly the era has changed in 50 years.
I'll put it to you this way. I had a friend of mine, little 5-year-old girl, always gives me a hug and a kiss, always sits on my lap. Same thing, coloring, whatever. I'm like, this is like my niece. My homeboy was like, well, I appreciate if you don't do that anymore. And I'm like, nigga, you knew me for over 26 years. You think I would die for your daughter to live? But if that's what you had to say, if that's how you feel, I'm gonna respect your wishes. And it's like you have guys who will get into these notions, and it's most likely probably because of his wife. And you're being, you see, but yet the first time when your wife gets on your nerves, I'm the motherfucker you come to. I'm like, yo, if I have a child of my own who, when he was the same age, I would do the same to him. And your daughter, you ever notice when she comes downstairs, she always want to talk to me? Why? Because she wants to see Uncle Charles. Look what I learned. I learned to tie my shoe. I learned to say blah. It's innocent. A black man can't be innocent with a child.
Right.
No.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but you see how the society is now. If a child is traveling with on a plane, on a bus by themselves, there can't be a man beside the child anymore. That law has changed. They're gonna ask the man to move. He is automatically guilty of even having the thought, or possibly having the thought in society's perception that he is gonna do something to that kid. You're guilty by perception in these cases nowadays.
Yes.
You have no intention. The thought doesn't come to you, but as long as it comes to them,
Yes.
you're done.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you
Yes.
for dropping some words to us, Saku. Go ahead and check yourself out. And I look
Take
forward
care, guys. Thank you.
I'm
on
just
another
gonna say
stream, brother.
this. I'm just gonna say this for my closing thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
Black men, not only did I say this before, it's time to have your own political party. It's time for us to look out and treat each other as your brother, your champion, and your savior. The t-shirts are coming out soon, don't worry. You're gonna have to take real good, careful view of the world and how you fit in it.
Mm-hmm.
You basically have almost no allies, except the other brother that looks out for you. We're all we got. Nobody's gonna understand your life like you. Take care of your kids. Take care of whoever wants to be in your light. If the chick wants to leave, tell her, hey, leave me the kids. And that's the only damn thing you gotta do is stay black and live. You ain't dying for nobody. It ain't worth it.
Yeah.
So it's always a pleasure, Doc. And yes, going back to the forge the Negro power sword. Ooh, voices.
Good to have you, brother. Thanks for coming up, man.
Yeah, my closing thoughts. Brothers, please think with your big head and not your small head.
Mm-hmm.
Please.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And watch and watch for those red flags. One of them, this is a true story. If they're little girls, I've had a couple little girls ask me, "Can you come home with me?" You gotta watch for those red flags. Keep it grinding, keep it pushing, keep it moving. I'm out.
All right, man. Appreciate that, AB. Take it easy.
I'll go ahead.
Go ahead.
Thanks for having me up, Dr. Johnson. Appreciate all the work that you're doing. Salute to you. Peace of the panel, peace of the chat. Once again, I'll say this. One of the reasons why I've been hitting on the points that I've been hitting on for the past year in regards to mothers, one of the main reasons why is because what I want Black men to understand that many of the frustrations that we have had dealing with many of these Black women has made many Black men internalize that something is wrong with them. And that's one of the things that I want Black men to walk away from discussions that we have on these particular levels, is to understand that just because you're not perfect doesn't mean that you're the problem.
Yeah.
And what I love about the information that I have been covering for the past year is that it's the sources that I've been using the most have been women talking about these particular type of issues. And they're completely going against the political narratives out here. In the social aspect of things, these mothers might be considered strong and independent. But in the psychological research, it's completely bogus. The psychological lexicon doesn't even support any of that notion. I was reading something recently on attachment theory, and it was talking about how there is absolutely no way genetically that we don't need each other. Like basically, our genetic makeup has us designed to where we need each other. It talks about this thing called the dependency paradox, and how basically having somebody to depend on allows us, even from a child perspective, and that same perspective even carries out through our adult life. Having somebody in your corner gives you even more confidence to go out there and try to achieve. And so when we see these particular types of, we have these particular types of conversations, I want Black men to realize, like, don't internalize people's mental health issues as your own issue. Don't internalize like there is something deficient with you. There's nothing deficient about you. There's nobody in America uh, during slavery, post slavery, who has worked harder than black men in America? Nobody. And so you have not been the one that's been abusing you. You've been in a system that has abused you. You connected to women who would try to abuse you, but
Okay.
it's not because you're the problem. And you just need to recognize that and really learn about these different things that's out here dealing with these mental health issues like borderline personality disorder and narcissism, so you can be much more aware of the types of people you're dealing with, even if it might be your own mother. And I'll leave it there.
Okay. Much appreciation, Ryle. Thanks for coming up, brother. All right. Good brother Ian.
Yes, I.
Drop us a word.
Oh man, I appreciate you being on the panel, Dr. Hasan, BGS, salute. I think that it hasn't been said better. Your brother, your champion, your savior. We are the only ones that can save one another. You know what I'm saying? We're the only ones. If you don't have good brothers in this world, you're not going to make it. That's just point blank period. And I think the dangers in this conversation surrounds the fact that women at this point are not self-aware, and they don't understand what real politics and power is, so they use their children as pawns. The children in a lot of ways are a barometer for what reality is in life, because women use the children to find out what sex means. They use the children to find out what power means. They use the children to find out what economics means. They're using their children for everything because they're not able to be self-aware enough to go out on their own and invest and try their own life. So beware, brothers. Understand that you have to be the king of your castle, and you have to rely on your brother. And peace, love everybody. Have a good night.
You as well, brother.
All right.
All right, man. Let me see. Hold on, BGS. I'm gonna give you a visual. Oh man, I don't know if it'll let me do that. Hold on. 1 second. Let's see if this thing is gonna cooperate with me for a moment. There we go. All right, BGS. I'm gonna give you a visual. You go ahead. Some closing thoughts on the subject with a visual.
One of my fan favorites, and actually did see that scene too. So
I still have brothers writing me. Where do I know her from? I'm like,
yeah,
you go ahead and look that up, player.
that's Sumi. It's Simi. It's Simi Asusa. So
Yeah, so that's what I was saying earlier, that I only know about this from staunch research that I've performed. That's the only reason I know about such a person.
somebody sent it to you in a link.
No comment. No. Well, give us your thoughts, man. Closing thoughts on the subject.
Yeah, unfortunately, this has been around for a very long time. The thing is that it's about time men start speaking up. Because a lot of times you have brothers that take the bait and then they wind up in jail, or they wind up getting the girlfriend pissed off. So like you said, there's you just one argument away from being on the street, but you also one argument away from going to jail.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
one argument from going to jail, and then she's got the proof.
Mm.
And I've heard that I've had a couple of girlfriends that tell me about their mothers allowing their boyfriends, their living boyfriends, because they're taking care of them, to have free reign. So this is not,
But
normally. Go ahead.
But no, even in those scenarios, the underlying narrative is that he pressured the mother to have access to the daughter. And I'm not saying that doesn't happen.
Right.
But the interesting thing about what my conversation with my friend revealed was
Mm-hmm.
that the mother brought her daughter to him.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a part of the discussion I haven't heard anybody mention in a public space.
I think how people think. That's one good thing about the manosphere, right? Because you think it's only you.
You think it's only you. Yeah.
Because nobody talks about it. And rightfully so, nobody's going to talk about it, because if you did talk about it, who would believe you?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And in at least 5 or 6 different instances, I saw people trying to find new and creative ways to make men the cause of the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Even if men weren't weren't the cause. They still tried to find unique ways. That's why I had to tell somebody. I said, my friend, my friend is over 50. He could have been talking about something from 30 years ago. And as much as he and I talk about dating, it very well could have been from 30 years ago for a 17 and a half-year-old girl. Now, he could still go to jail over that, or it could have happened last week. He didn't say, but it's interesting to me that the assumption is that he did something wrong.
Right.
And you got to call somebody right now. I'm like, that woman might be a grown woman with 3 kids.
Yeah. But I've had, like I said, what I told you, behind the scenes about having take a girlfriend's daughter out of danger, but not being able to take her to my house. Okay.
Wow.
Just because of that.
Yeah.
And I think I don't want to expound upon it because how YouTube is and they're going to find the people. But yeah, so I've had the experience, and that you can't really even take the child to your house and put her in the give her a nightie, put her in the bed without being accused. She said you better take her someplace else that's safe. Okay,
Yeah.
that doesn't have anything to do with you, with documented proof that child is there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's a whole different scenario. Like I love kids, man, especially babies. And I'll be at a conference or something during the plenary dinner, and kids will be running around, and they'll just walk up to you and start talking. And I remember a time when you could pick a kid up and start going over letters and numbers, just like I said in the movie I was watching.
Right.
But we are not in those times anymore. So
it kind of reminds me of I think it was what was that show? Remember the show, and they had the little white baby that was on the elevator.
Oh, Blackish.
Blackish, right? And he didn't get on the elevator because there was a little 3-year-old white girl, little bitty white girl on the elevator, and he said it was a trap. Yeah, and that's the way you have to approach it, just the same way they did.
Sadly so.
Sadly so.
But I do appreciate you popping up, especially impromptu, brother. So thank you. I just wanted to get your word on that, but yeah, appreciate it, man.
All right, sir.
All right, man. All right,
Peace.
Peace. Okay, now because my system is acting weird, you guys are going to get an old school. I'm going to actually read my closing live again because I want to make sure that it goes off without a hitch. But I want to thank you for joining today's show, especially if you managed to call in. It's much appreciated, or come on, I should say, because we had a lot to cover and there's a lot out there. And again, I'm not proposing the data around how often this happens. I don't know. I haven't seen anybody compile that information. I'm not sure how they would. But that being said, I at least wanted to introduce it to the discourse because in most settings that I find myself in, professionally speaking, I find it very uphill. It's an uphill battle to actually make men the focus, especially men who are in positions that are incredibly vulnerable. People have a difficult time internalizing that. And if you have any doubt about that, you can even look at the last few weeks on the discussions going on with Richard Williams. And even though he wasn't necessarily in a position of vulnerability, he was in a position of being highlighted positively for his fathering. And you can see how much vitriol was brought to him just for being positioned positively. So if we're not even dealing with the issue of vulnerability yet, you can imagine how much vitriol goes toward men in those scenarios. So that being said, appreciate y'all for coming up on the Onyx Report. And here, let me see if I can bring this up. I have to do this in a different way than I normally do, but I'll at least pull it up this way so you might be able to take a screenshot if you find it necessary to do so. And if you can't see it, I apologize. Nevertheless, brothers, be reminded that we are not criminals by birth, perennial rapists, incapable intellects, man-children, sperm donors, child support wellsprings, success objects, walking phalluses, ATM machines, lottery tickets, brainless henchmen, valueless assassins, pro bono mercenaries, unpaid bodyguards, interchangeable stepfathers, child discipline proxies, unpaid repairmen, workhorses, emotional tampons, or any other socially accepted dehumanizing stereotype. We are thinkers, inventors, innovators, leaders, fathers, warriors, and men. Embrace your humanity, know your worth, and extend your time, attention, and resources only to those who genuinely respect you. And remember, your worth is not defined by meeting other people's narcissistic, selfish, and unrealistic needs. You define your worth. Peace. Down.